Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Years ago, if you wanted to build a relationship, you showed up, right? You showed up at an event, a trade association, wherever, chamber function, whatever. You showed up, you shook hands, you broke bread, maybe some point later. Today, it's different, right? We swipe, we scroll, we click. It's kind of a different world. And somewhere along the way, we started to confuse access with connection. Oh, I know that person. Oh, I know that person. Well, you just connected to them. You really don't know them. But what if we could better understand what actually motivates people? What if we could match based not on job titles, but on what actually drives humans? That's where today's conversation is going to go. I have with me someone who has built companies. She's exited companies. She's studied human behavior, and now she's building an algorithm around connection itself. And that's a great conversation for the Networking RX podcast. Jennifer Cahill is with me today. She's an entrepreneur, executive coach, speaker with over 20 years of experience. She exited her first company in 2018 and is a recognized expert by BBC News, ABC, NBC, Fox. It goes the whole gamut. But in 2021, she co-founded OptiMatch, which is an algorithm revolutionizing human connection in business by matching people using motivating factors. Jennifer, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Frank. It's a pleasure to be here with you and your audience.
So I guess give us the nickel tour. How did you get to this point in time? I mean, I'm fascinated by this. People always ask me, is LinkedIn gonna destroy networking? And my response is no, it's not. The telephone didn't, right? So it's just another tool. But I was thinking the other day, somebody asked me to connect them to people. And I was looking at all my LinkedIn connections. And I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be awesome if I just had a way that I could just sort through all of these? Almost an AI, have it do the thinking for me. Todd should meet this person. He should meet this person. He should meet this person. In fact, I should introduce you to Todd. But anyhow, that's a whole nother conversation. But how did we get here? How did you get here?
My story is a little bit different than most people's, Frank's, or maybe not that different at all from some of the speeches I've done and talks I've done on the topic. For me, Frank, when I was a little girl, to me, it was like everybody else got a book on how to be a human. You got one, and he got one, and she got one. Yeah. But when I was nine, the pages were blank. And so as I got older, I started to notice something, Frank. I was always alone. My lunch times were often spent tucked away in the school library or helping kids with special needs. And eventually I got to a certain point in high school where I started to write a news story that went, be whoever you have to be to belong. And that led into a 7-year spiral of alcohol, drugs, self-hatred, suicidal ideation, until one day I had a massive wake-up call. After I was sad, lonely, scared, all the things, doing my best just to survive day to day. My boyfriend at the time did a personal development class, and he was like one of those people who's on a soapbox. Do this 2 thing and you shall be saved. And I'm like, shut up about this stupid class right now. I hate myself. I've been bulimic about 7 years at this point. I mean, I was the epitome. I was a poster child for self-hatred. And so after about 8 months of him going on and on and on about the stupid class he did, finally one day, cross my hands and say, fine, I'm going to do your stupid class. And he's like, okay, great. That's the best news ever. And I said, to prove that it's a cult. He's like, great, they'll still transform you. So day 1 comes of this 3-day weekend class in personal development in Los Angeles, and I'm in this super beige room with 150 people outside of LAX. And the person who's facilitating the class says, does anybody have any questions before we get started? And before he's even finished asking the question, my hand shoots up. And he says, yes, you out there in the Von Bitch t-shirt. I literally had a t-shirt. It was a brand at the time in LA called Von Bitch emblazoned upon my bosom. And so I said, how would you respond to the fact that this, meaning the class, is a cult? That guy looks at me, gives me a little side eye and a chuckle. He says, if it is a cult, it's the best damn cult you'll ever join. Next question. So that whole weekend, I'm sitting there being what I call a judgy bunny. I am stewing in self-righteousness. People are getting breakthroughs in family. Meanwhile, I'm throwing up in the bathroom every lunch break I get, right? I hate myself. And the whole class culminates. Now everybody's there to watch your miraculous transformation. So my boyfriend and his friends are there, and the class is all culminated. And this tall Aussie woman comes up. Now, clearly I haven't been transformed because I've been sitting there just like judging everybody. And she says, who's been co-leading the class, she says, are you going to do the advanced class? And I said, sweetheart, darling, it was stifling enough having sat in this room the last 3 days. Do you really think I would put myself through this hell again? And she looks at me and looks at my boyfriend. He shakes his head and says, don't get me started. It took her 8 months just to do this one. And that, Frank, was the moment my life changed. That was the moment. I looked at my boyfriend and I said, this is an at-will relationship. You can leave anytime you want. And the woman who was looking at my boyfriend and I goes, can I be straight with you? And I said, sure, darling, go ahead. You be really straight with me. She said, you are a nasty thing. You are one of the most powerful women I've ever met in my life, except you know what? You are like Godzilla with a huge tail swinging behind you, knocking down buildings wherever you go. Except guess what? Those aren't buildings, those are people whose lives you're destroying. She looked at my boyfriend, said, leave her, it's what she needs, and walked away. After I picked my job off the floor, went into my office the next day and I said, either this woman is off her rocker or she's 100% right and I'm hallucinating my whole life and I thought I was a good person. So I went into my office the next day and there's about 25 people and I was already pretty successful. And I went and I said, before the team meeting, I kind of sheepishly looked at everybody. I said, by any chance, have I ever been condescending or mean or rude to any of you? And kind of looked away. So quiet, Frank, you could hear a pin drop. Then one woman bursts out laughing and says, Jay Hill, you are only the most condescending, demeaning bitch we've ever met in our lives, and we have no idea how you're successful. And that was the moment I realized I was an asshole. So later this year, I have a book coming out called The Recovering Asshole that gets into the journey and the stories that I learned in 20 years that now is a whole practice, and it was out of survival. So when people say, how did I become what I'm now called and termed as the fairy godmother of human connection? I connect thousands of people around the world. I have OptiMatch. I have an amazing group of humans called the Jen Hill Tribe / Love Club, over 300 entrepreneurs that we all uplift and support one another in humanity. And that all came out of survival, because if I didn't understand myself and others, I wasn't going to make it. So I've made it my life's work to understand myself and others.
It's I have to pull my jaw up off the desk on that. I mean, it's a testament to the saying, we can't see the water we're swimming in, right? And I don't have a team of 25 people to go to, but I often, I have that conversation with myself all the time. Am I being an asshole? And in times I am, and sometimes I will justify it, right? You know what? We have a contract. I'm just enforcing the contract. You know, you've agreed to this. This is what we're going to do. And other times it's like, you know what? I could have been kinder and gentler, and I need to go apologize, and just try and do better. So.
We're all human. We're all, in fact, how I end the book is my friend Isabel, we were out to lunch one day in Portugal where I live, and I'm telling her all the crazy shit I got up to. The opening line of the book is, I may have had to drug my mother, but at least I was no longer alone. And so that just so I get into all this. I tell her about all the crazy shenanigans I got up to, and Isabel says over to me at lunch, she says, Jen, but are you really an asshole? And that's really the big reveal at the end, is looking into what makes us an asshole, and these labels. And I share a story about my dad, and at the end it's like, what if we're all imperfect human beings doing the best we can each and every day? And what if we could actually begin to see, Frank, the lens that we see ourselves in the world through? Like, we all walk through life and we don't realize that we're wearing asshole colored glasses towards our staff, towards our team. This was actually one of the most insightful things that happened to me. My late co-founder of OptiMatch, Julian Adler, recently passed away and was an extraordinary influence. I think I'm going to actually dedicate this book to him. And about 13 years ago, when I was still deep in my asshole era, but really trying hard to recover, I was failing miserably.
Yeah.
And Jillian came to me, and I had a team member, and she was not returning calls, not getting back to people on time. So I was about to put her on a pip and fire her. And Julian said to me, Jen, what if the reason that she is a failure is because you are looking for her to be a disappointment? Excuse me, I have a list a mile long of clients and complaints. Yeah. And he said, fair, you can be right. Just to your point, right? Like, are we being assholes? Are we being right? Are we being right? Yes, right? And so Julian says, here's my challenge for you, Jen. You don't even have to tell her you're doing this. For 1 week, all I want you to do is write down one good thing she does a day. You don't even have to tell her. And I kind of harumphed and like, yeah, whatever, buddy, that's going to be a nightmare. I won't be able to do it. But he went on to explain the science behind it. And I love this. This is why everything I do, I have a very scientific, logical side of my brain and a side of my brain that just like loves to meditate. So Julian dropped into the science and he said, scientifically speaking, Jen, every second of every day, we have 11 million bits of information hitting our subconscious mind. But do you know, Frank, how many of those bits of information we're paying attention to consciously of the 11 million bits?
Probably zero.
Close, very close. Close almost as you can get to a zero, 54 to 120 bits. So the analogy I always like to give to people, Frank, is it's like we're all walking around in these infinitely wide pitch black warehouses where we can't see our hand in front of our face. And our only guiding light, literally, not just figuratively, is like this little miner's helmet we have on with an itty bitty little pen light. So we're only ever going to see. So whether it's your mother, your brother, your spouse, your child, your boss, whomever, if you're looking for them to fail or to be a disaster or to be a disappointment, you're going to focus on those 50 to 120 bits consciously, to Julian's point. So I harumphed. I was like, fine, I'll try this stupid exercise. The first day, she's human. Day 2, she breathes. Day 3, then I was able to actually, and I didn't tell her, but I started appreciating things about her and just writing them down for my own edification. Well, at the end of day 7, Frank, she was kicking ass, taking names. And I'm proud to say that a few years later, when we exited that company, I got to leave the company 3 years early, move to Europe, because she took over the company for me right before COVID started and it was out of my hands. She handled it all and she took over the company, that same person.
That's awesome. I mean, I think that is a great story. As you're talking, I'm thinking about my own situations because I'll do that as well, right? I'm just so angry. I'm so angry about something somebody did or, well, here's a great example. I've got a guy and I won't mention him here, but he knows because we've had this conversation. He's always late. Jen, he is always late. He's always late. He'll be late to he's always late and he'll show up 15 minutes late and I'll tease him. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm kind of type A. I'm like earlier, you're late kind of a person. Right. And so that really grates on me. But I took a step back and I'm like, you know what? I need to look at the positive side of this. I can judge this person on this one little attribute. But what are other things? And I started to realize this guy is prolific. He's as far as growing groups and inviting people and setting things up. I mean, he's not afraid of talking to anybody, right? And I have other people in my life who are always on time. They're always very punctual, always very, cross the T's, dot the I's, and they can't do a tenth of what he does, right? So you have to ask yourself, what do you want, right? You know what? I'll take him being late. I'll deal with it. If we're in a meeting together, I'll just cover for him. I think he had something going and, whatever. And it works. Wow. This whole conversation. I expected a very like ones and zero techie sort of a conversation. And you, and we certainly will probably get there, hopefully. But I didn't expect any of this. So.
Expect the unexpected, isn't that what they say?
Yeah. So, I guess talk about OptiMatch and how you got to that.
So Julian goes back to my late co-founder Julian. So after we sold the first company, so Julian helped me. He was instrumental. He helped me realize what an asshole I was. So he's the one who came in and I once sent an all caps email, Frank, that said, are you all a bunch of effing morons? Why are you not working faster, smarter, harder, right? Because I
Yeah.
thought everybody was just being stubborn assholes. And Julian's like, so we're going to soften the language on your email. So he helps me exit that company. I take a year sabbatical. I move to Europe and I'm like, freedom, I'm never going to run another company again. And around the end of that year, this woman and I meet at an online thing because it was all during COVID. And she says, oh, I'm looking for an advisor. So I started advising her on building connections. She wanted to build a matchmaking platform to match
Yeah.
therapists and so forth. And I'm like, cool. Well, I said, I'll only build another company. So first I start off as her advisor. Then after a few months of advisor, she's like, well, I really need a co-founder. I'm like, oh, shit. I never thought I'd build another company again, right? And so I said, okay, here's the crux. I'll only build another company if Julian comes on board. He has to at least advise or be a part of it. He was instrumental. He has to keep my assholiness in check, right?
Yeah. He grounds you. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So he came in and we all started building it. And then she had to leave for personal reasons early on. And Julian and I started building it. And around the time that we all started building it together, Jules said, Jen, why don't we create an algorithm that mirrors your intuition on how you've already matched tens of thousands of people in the first recruiting company we sold together? And I was like, shit, that sounds great. I'm not a techie. How do I do that? And he was a mathematical genius and tech guy and engineer. And so next thing you know, we were off to the races and we started developing what's now OptiMatch Om.app. Anybody can try for free the version of the survey that sits on our website, the public version, which is om.app/survey. And what it does is it measures how you're motivated. And we set out to be the world's best matchmakers, to be able to predict. We've gotten up to about 87% degree accuracy of who you're going to fall in love with, do business with, be friends with, who your best therapist is. We started off testing it with patients and therapists. And then one of the first investors I ever presented it to said, I don't give a shit about your marketplace, but if you're as good as you are at matchmaking, you need to make this available for all of humanity. And so we started developing that. So we've been used in business settings and communities. I use it within my own Gen Hill tribe community to set people up on business dates. We've been used on Necker Island by Mind Valley. And my favorite thing is I love using it to go into tech companies or to corporations and startups and help them analyze their teams and help enhance efficiency and performance on that.
Can you share a story of a success story? I mean, you're covering the gamut here, right? I mean, a lot of people in business are matchmaking in business, and there's certainly people out there who are connecting people for love. And it's like you're
Very
doing it.
Godmother human connection at your service.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I'll give you a great story. So a couple of years ago when we first started using this in business, this was a really fun one. We had a team, a tech startup team that was a funded company, and I started working with their CEO and CTO. So we did an analysis of their team, and it turned out that the CTO matched perfectly with the BD people according to his motivations and the salespeople, and the CEO matched perfectly with all the engineers, but they were reversed. So literally all of the engineers hated the person who was the CEO because they were adversely motivated. So what we found based on all of our studies on human behavior and motivation, if your motivators and your motivators, Frank, are complementary to each other, there's going to be natural psychological safety. In fact, Google did a project called Project Aristotle around 2012, and they set out studying 36,000 people, hundreds of teams across Google, to figure out what is the number one factor in team success. And what they found out is exactly what we put our money and time and energy developing and researching, which is that the number one factor in team success is psychological safety. So imagine, Frank, you've had this before, I'm sure, with your clients, and I'm sure many of you listening can relate. Have you ever met somebody and you want to punch them in the face the moment you meet them? You don't know why, but it's like everything they say is like nails on a chalkboard. It's like one person speaking apple and another speaking orange. You literally can't hear each other. It's like you're speaking a different language. Happens in couples, businesses, etc. Then you have other people where it's like, I want to have a beer with that person, I want to go golf, I want to travel with that person, that's my person, right? So what we found according to our algorithm is that when people are similarly motivated, or what we call OptiMatch, 0 to 5 points motivation above or below your motivators in the 4 areas we measure, plus assertiveness scale, then that's what creates natural affinity, psychological safety, increased productivity, efficiency, and performance. Where you have adversely motivated people, like we did in the case of this team, one of 3 things has to happen. Before we changed their roles, the first thing we did is we taught the apples. So apples are motivated by information. So we taught the CEO, who was an apple, to speak the language of the other types, and vice versa. We taught the CTO to speak the types of the apples. And so that was how we had originally began to fix it. Then eventually we actually switched the roles, and we realized, because like 7 of the engineers matched perfectly with the CEO, that we switched the CEO and CTO roles. So it created natural alignment and affinity, and it created greater productivity, efficiency, and performance for the team.
And yeah, I mean, we think of most networking as being focused on industry or skill sets, and you're focusing on motivation.
I'll tie it in actually to another very simple concept that I use in networking, because I love networking and I love helping people understand how to be more effective. A couple of my friends, Mark Fujiwara and Randy Mullen, came up with this concept called the +2. So funny story, Mark Fujiwara a couple years ago had this daughter who I think was 3 at the time, and he worked downstairs in his home office, and he comes up on a Thursday and his little 3-year-old's there. She's like, "Daddy, why you fake smile?" And he's like, "Honey, I'm not fake smiling, I'm happy." She's like, "No," she shakes her head, "Daddy, you fake smile." He's like, "What the hell?" So he goes to his wife and he's like, "Honey, our daughter's saying I'm fake smiling." She's like, "Oh, you are. You fake smile every Thursday." He said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Every time you get off a call with XYZ client, you fake smile because you're drained, you're depleted, you have nothing left to give your daughter and me." And he says, "Really?" So being the analytical guy that he was, financial guy, he starts creating a spreadsheet to look at kind of his energy. Well, he shares the story with another friend of ours, Randy Mullen. You can find an article I wrote on LinkedIn about this. And Randy creates a formula around it called the +2 formula. So here's what it essentially comes down to. If you and I get on a call, Frank, and I feel energized, or we meet for coffee, or we meet for a glass of wine, or to golf, or whatever it is, and I feel more expansive, more energized by the time we're done with that call, that Zoom, that meeting, right? That's what we call +2. It means your energy is amplified. If you meet somebody and there's a +1, it's like, "Ooh, that was interesting." You feel a little bit of like a zing, like a decaf coffee, right? Like a little pick me up, but not quite the full one, right? Like, "Ooh,
Right.
That's what we call +1. 0, net 0, you forgot the person. They really didn't even register as plus or minus for you. Not good or bad. It's just, and this is their energy, by the way, not the person. It's your energy after the event. -1 is like, ooh, it's like there was a little bit of like a weirdness after it. You know, you meet somebody. I was that asshole one time. I remember I went to a networking event and I printed out 500 freshly minted business cards. And I was like the gunslinger in a terrible cowboy movie. And I was like, "Hi, I'm Jennifer K. Hill. Nice to meet you. Hi." And I literally handed out hundreds of cards and I was parting people like the Red Sea. So I would have been -1 in that sense, because I'm just trying to, right? And then you get -2s, which are very few and far between, but they're just kind of jerks. Like there was somebody recently who I was lamenting my co-founder's loss, and he's like, "Well, you should still hire me for this." I was trying to explain to him, OptiMatch, we're pivoting, blah, blah, blah. I was like, "You're clearly not listening." And so when you get a -2, you never respond to that person again except via email. And now what you do is you have a system. So when I network with people, and I built this global, huge network, thousands and thousands of people, plus our own individual tribe, when somebody is a +2, I look at, where did my best +2 referrals come from? Was it a particular networking group? Was it an event? Was it my dear friend Jem Fuller, Randy Mullen? Those are some of my favorite +2 humans who refer me great +2s all year. And then I'd be sure to prioritize time and energy with those +2 people, so I don't waste my energy and deplete it, so it leaves me more energized at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, and at the end of the year. And that's a system that we all use called the +2 system. And my +2 might be different than yours.
Sure.
Somebody +2 for me might be a -2, probably not a -2, but maybe a -1 or a 0 for you.
Yeah. No, I think that makes total sense. It depends on what I'm looking for and what I jive with, and yeah, I mean.
And here's what gets crazy to tie this into OptiMatch. So because I've had a population of thousands and thousands of people who have taken OptiMatch, and pretty much anybody I meet tries it, I have seen correlative data that the people I consider +2s are also similarly motivated. To tie it back into your earlier question, what do motivations have to do with networking? 100% of everything, because if you and I are similarly motivated, we're just going to feel that natural psychological safety and affinity, that +2 sort of energy.
Yeah, and you want to help those people.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story about this. One of my friends, Amy, we had known each other for a couple of years, and we had been in places where we had traveled to a location but not traveled together. And a few years ago, I was invited to speak on a very big stage in India. My husband couldn't join, so Amy wanted to be like, "I'll come with." So we've never shared a room, we've never traveled together aside from seeing each other. So it was day 3 of our trip. We're in Sri Lanka, about to head to Thailand, I think it was. And Amy says, "Oh, Jen, I haven't answered your matching questions in a while." She was one of our early beta testers. And I said, "Oh, great." So we're sitting in the airport. She answers the question. This is when we had a smaller population of maybe 1,000 people who had answered at that point. And back in the day, you used to get an immediate email that would say who your top matches were in the ecosystem. And I kid you not, this was crazy, Frank. Out of 1,000 people, I came back as her number 3 match. She and I proceeded to travel to 5 countries, 4 weeks, didn't have a single fight the whole time we traveled together.
Wow. That's amazing. All right, let's shift gears here. People are listening. I'm fascinated. You're fascinated, or you're fascinating, I should say. I think other people will be fascinated by this. How can people help you? How can they get a hold of you? Certainly everybody should take the assessment. We'll get that in the show notes. I'll make sure I get that in the show notes. But what else? What are you looking for? What are you looking to do?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. So if you're interested in the Recovering Asshole book that'll be coming out later this year and you want to learn about the upcoming classes I have, such as stop being an asshole in your marriage, how to stop being an asshole to yourself, how to stop being an asshole at work, there'll be a series of classes and the book coming out later this year. You can go to antiassholeprayer.com. That's something that everybody loves. It's a little mantra that I teach people to say to start zapping the assholes in your life. And so anybody can go there, and when you sign up for that, you'll go ahead and be put on the waiting list for the book and all the classes and all that fun stuff, and you'll be kept apprised of any events or speaking that I do. So it's antiassholeprayer.com.
Okay. I will get that out there. I really appreciate your time today. This has been fascinating. So yeah, no, we'll talk again, I'm sure.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you to all your listeners.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connections. All rights reserved.